American tank destroyers could move at 55 miles per hour, almost twice the speed of German Panthers. And in the snow-covered forests of the Ardennes, speed was everything. The Americans used that advantage to save thousands of lives, but only after they lost so many. This is how a group of forgotten heroes changed the course of the war. The 16th of December 1944, the coldest winter in memory had descended upon the Ardennes Forest. Snow blanketed the ground, trees heavy with frost. Most Allied commanders believed the German army was finished, beaten back across the Rhine, their fuel supplies dwindling, their ranks depleted. Lieutenant Jack Harmon stood on the edge of a ridge, binoculars raised to his eyes, scanning the tree line below. Behind him sat the M18 Hellcat, the fastest armoured fighting vehicle in the U.S. Army, capable of reaching speeds up to 55 miles per hour. His crew waited inside, engines idling, breath forming clouds in the freezing air. "I don't like it, sir," said Sergeant Miller, the gunner. "Too quiet." Harmon lowered the binoculars. "Keep your eyes open. Something's coming. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you." 3 hours later, the silence of the forest was shattered by the thunder of artillery. The Germans had launched a massive counteroffensive, punching through the thinly defended Allied lines with over 200,000 men and 1,000 tanks. The Battle of the Bulge had begun. Harmon's unit, the 805th Tank Destroyer Battalion, found themselves directly in the path of the German advance. The radio crackled with frantic messages as Allied positions fell one after another. "This wasn't supposed to happen," whispered Private Jenkins, the loader. "They said the Germans were finished." "Well, somebody forgot to tell the Germans," Harmon replied, unfolding his map. "Start the engine. We need to get back to the Telemins." Command. But there was no command post to return to. As they approached the small Belgian town of Houffalize, they saw American troops retreating in disarray. A captain waved them down, face streaked with soot and blood. "The Germans broke through at Lochheim Gap," he shouted over the engine noise. "Panthers and tigers, dozens of them. They've overrun 3 villages already." Harmon felt his stomach drop. German Panther tanks were fearsome machines, heavily armoured, with a high-velocity 75mm gun that could penetrate American armour with ease. But they had one critical weakness. Their turrets rotated slowly. "Where's the rest of your battalion?" the captain asked. "We got separated during a reconnaissance mission," Harmon replied. "I've got 5 Hellcats about 2 miles back." The captain grabbed Harmon's arm. "Listen to me. The 101st Airborne is moving to secure Bastogne. If the Germans take that crossroads, they'll have a straight shot to Antwerp. You need to slow them down, buy us time. With 6 tank destroyers against an armoured division, you're all we've got." As the captain left to organise the retreat, Sergeant Miller approached Harmon. "What are we going to do, Lieutenant?" Harmon stared at the map, mind racing. The M18 Hellcat was lightly armoured, designed for speed and mobility, not head-on confrontations with German tanks. In a direct fight, they wouldn't stand a chance, but if they used the terrain, if they struck fast and disappeared before the Germans could respond. "We're going hunting," Harmon said. Back with the rest of his unit, Harmon gathered his crews around a makeshift table in an abandoned farmhouse. The men looked exhausted, faces grim in the dim light of a kerosene lamp. "The situation is bad," Harmon began, not sugarcoating it. "The Germans have broken through along a 50-mile front. They've got Panthers, Tigers, and infantry, and they're moving fast." "How many?" asked Lieutenant Davis, commander of the 2nd Hellcat. "At least 100 tanks in this sector alone." A murmur ran through the group. They all knew what that meant. Their M18s carried 76mm guns, powerful enough to penetrate a Panther's side armour, but nearly useless against its frontal plate. "We can't stop them," Harmon continued, "but we can slow them down, buy time for the 101st to dig in at Bastogne." He pointed to the map. "The Germans are advancing along these 3 roads. They're in a hurry, which means they're taking risks. Their columns are stretched thin, fuel is limited, and they're moving mostly at night. "And how exactly do 6 tank destroyers stop an armoured division?" asked Sergeant Cooper, always the skeptic. Harmon smiled grimly. "We don't. We hit them where they're vulnerable, when they least expect it, and we never stop moving. We use our speed 55 miles per hour on open ground. A Panther tops out at 30, and that's on a good day." He traced a route on the map. "We set up ambush positions here, here, and here. We target fuel trucks, artillery, supply vehicles, anything that slows their advance. We hit hard and disappear before they can bring their guns to bear." "And if we run into Panthers?" Davis asked. "We strike from the flanks or rear. Their turrets rotate at less than 10 degrees per second. At the right angle, we can fire and move before they can turn to face us." Private Jenkins raised his hand. "Sir, they'll send infantry to flush us out. That's why we never stay in one place. Strike and move, day and night. We sleep in shifts, eat on the move." The men exchanged glances. What Harmon was proposing wasn't in any field manual. It was desperate, dangerous, and probably suicidal. "I won't lie to you," Harmon said, seeing their doubt. "Some of us won't make it back, but if we do nothing, thousands of our boys will die, and the Germans might just win this thing. I'm asking for volunteers only. Anyone who wants out can join the retreat to Bastogne." Filled the room. Then Sergeant Miller stood. "I'm in." One by one, the others rose. No one left. "All right," Harmon said, feeling a surge of pride. "We move out in 15 minutes. Minimal supplies, full ammo load. And, gentlemen, from this point on, we're ghosts." The first engagement came at dawn the next day. Harmon's Hellcat was positioned on a wooded ridge, overlooking a narrow country road. Below, a column of German vehicles was moving West trucks, half-tracks, and at the rear, 3 Panther tanks. "Target the lead vehicle and the last," Harmon ordered quietly. "Then the fuel trucks." Miller adjusted his gun sight. Range, 800 yards. Lead vehicle acquired. Fire. The Hellcat's gun roared, the shells striking the lead truck squarely. It erupted in flames, blocking the road. Before the Germans could react, Miller had already shifted his aim to the rear vehicle, firing again. The Panther at the column's end began to turn its turret, searching for the source of the attack. "Too slow," Miller muttered, firing a third time. The shell struck the Panther's vulnerable side armor, penetrating the ammunition storage. The turret blew off in a spectacular explosion. "Hit the fuel trucks and pull back," Harmon ordered. 2 more shots, 2 more explosions. Then the Hellcat's engine roared to life, and they were racing away through the forest, leaving chaos behind them. By noon, similar reports came in from the other Hellcat crews. Davis had destroyed 2 Tigers caught refueling. Cooper had ambushed a German command post, all without losses, but their success wouldn't go unanswered. By afternoon, Luftwaffe planes were searching the forests. German infantry began combing the woods, and radio intercepts indicated that special hunter-killer teams of Panthers were being formed to track down the American tank destroyers. "They're adapting," Harmon told his crews when they regrouped that evening. "We need to change tactics." For the next 3 days, they waged a guerrilla campaign across the Ardennes. They struck at night, used the falling snow for cover, laid false trails, and never attacked from the same position twice. They destroyed bridges, set ambushes, and harassed German columns relentlessly. The toll on the men was extreme. They slept no more than 2 hours at a stretch, lived on K-rations and melted snow, and performed maintenance on their vehicles while under constant threat of discovery. But they also inflicted disproportionate damage on the enemy. By December 19th, German radio traffic showed increasing frustration. Units were reporting delays, supply problems, and unexpected resistance. The advance toward Bastogne was slowing exactly what Harmon had hoped for, but their luck couldn't hold forever. On the morning of December 20th, Lieutenant Davis's Hellcat failed to make the scheduled rendezvous. Hours later, they found the burned-out wreckage in a small clearing. The crew had been caught by German infantry and died fighting. That night, as his exhausted men tried to sleep in a freezing barn, Harmon studied his maps by flashlight. They had lost one Hellcat, and 2 others needed major repairs. Ammunition was running low, and German patrols were getting closer to their hiding places. Sergeant Miller found him there, eyes red from fatigue. "The men are asking if we've done enough, sir. The 101st has had 4 days to prepare Bastogne. Maybe it's time we tried to break through to friendly lines." Harmon showed him the latest intelligence report, smuggled out by Belgian resistance fighters. "The Germans have surrounded Bastogne. The 101st is holding, but they're outnumbered and low on supplies. If the German armour breaks through, it's over." "So what's the plan?" Harmon pointed to a spot on the map. "Intelligence reports a major German supply depot here, near the village of Street Vith. Fuel, ammunition, spare parts, everything they need to sustain the offensive." "That'll be heavily defended." "Yes, it will." Harmon looked up. "If we can destroy it, we might just break the back of their advance." Miller was silent for a long moment. "That's a one-way mission, sir." "Probably," Harmon admitted. "I'll go alone. The rest of you try to reach American lines." "With all due respect, Lieutenant, that's not happening. If you're going, we're all going." Dawn broke over the Ardennes on December 21st. The remaining 5 Hellcats of the 805th Tank Destroyer Battalion moved silently through the snowy forest, engines muffled, crews tense and alert. They had abandoned all non-essential equipment to maximize speed and ammunition capacity. 2 miles from Street Vith, they encountered the first German checkpoint, a half-track and 20 infantry. They hit it at full speed, guns blazing, not stopping to confirm destruction. "They'll radio ahead," Harmon warned over the comm system. "We've got minutes at best." The supply depot came into view, a sprawling collection of tents, vehicles, and fuel drums in a large clearing. As Harmon had predicted, it was heavily defended. 3 Panther tanks guarded the perimeter, along with multiple anti-tank guns and several hundred infantry. "There," Harmon pointed to a narrow ravine that approached the depot from the northeast. "If we come in fast from that direction, we can hit the fuel storage before they can bring their guns to bear." "That's a tight space for 5 tank destroyers," Cooper observed. "We go in single file. I'll take point. Maximum speed all the way. Don't stop for anything." Harmon looked at each of his crew in turn. "Whatever happens, it's been an honor." At exactly 0700 hours, 5 M18 Hellcats burst from the tree line, engines screaming as they hit 55 miles per hour. The Germans, caught by surprise, scrambled to respond. A Panther began rotating its turret, but too slowly the Hellcats were moving too fast for it to track. Anti-tank guns fired, shells exploding around them. Harmon's Hellcat took a hit to the track but kept moving on momentum. As they entered the depot, they fired at point-blank range into the fuel storage. The first explosion sent a fireball hundreds of feet into the air. "Keep moving," Harmon shouted. "Target the ammunition next!" They raced through the depot like avenging angels, guns firing continuously. Supply trucks exploded, ammunition dumps detonated, and chaos reigned. Behind them, the pursuing Panthers struggled to navigate the burning wreckage. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Cooper's Hellcat was the first to fall, hit from behind by a Panther that had managed to get into position. Then, Lieutenant Adams took a direct hit from an anti-tank gun. Still, the remaining 3 Hellcats continued their rampage. As they reached the far side of the depot, heading for the tree line and possible escape, Harmon looked back. The entire supply base was in flames, secondary explosions still rippling through it. They had succeeded. Then a Tiger tank, hidden in the trees ahead, opened fire. The shell struck Harmon's Hellcat directly in the engine compartment. He felt the vehicle lurch to a stop, smoke filling the crew compartment. "Everybody out," he ordered. As they scrambled from the burning vehicle, German infantry opened fire from the woods. Private Jenkins fell immediately, followed by the radio operator. Miller dragged Harmon into a shallow ditch as bullets kicked up snow around them. "The other 2 Hellcats made it to the trees," he shouted over the gunfire. "They might make it back." Harmon nodded, pressing a hand to his bleeding side. "That's enough." For 3 hours, they held off German infantry with their sidearms and a single machine gun salvaged from their destroyed Hellcat. When the ammunition ran out, Miller looked at Harmon, who had grown pale from blood loss. "It's been an honor, sir." Before the Germans could reach their position, the sky filled with the unmistakable roar of aircraft engines. American P-47 Thunderbolts swept in, strafing the German positions. Behind them came the rumble of tank engines, not German, but American. The 4th Armoured Division had broken through the German lines and was racing to relieve Bastogne. As the first Sherman tank crested the ridge, Harmon allowed himself a smile. Their desperate gamble had paid off. The destruction of the supply depot had critically weakened the German offensive, giving the relief force the opening they needed. 3 days later, in a field hospital near Bastogne, General Patton himself visited the survivors of the 805th. "You men held up an entire German armoured division with 6 tank destroyers," the general said, shaking his head in amazement. "The brass didn't think it was possible." "Not 6, sir," Harmon corrected from his hospital bed. 5. And it was the speed that did it. 55 miles per hour against their 30. We could hit and disappear before they could even turn their turrets. Patton studied the young lieutenant thoughtfully. "They're calling you the ghosts of the Ardennes out there. The Germans thought they were facing an entire battalion." He placed a silver star on Harmon's blanket. "We're changing the doctrine based on what you've done. Hit fast, hit hard, never stay still. It's going to save a lot of lives." As Patton left, Sergeant Miller approached Harmon's bed. "The doctors say you'll be stateside by Christmas." Harmon shook his head. "Not until the job is done." He pointed to the map of the front lines posted on the wall. "The Germans are retreating, but they're not beaten yet." Miller smiled. "Well, they gave us new Hellcats, faster ones, they say." The mechanics added extra armor to the sides without sacrificing speed. "How many crews volunteered?" "All of them. We've got 12 tank destroyers ready to go as soon as you're fit." Harmon looked out the window at the snow-covered hills, where, even now, American forces were pushing the Germans back. They had changed the course of the battle, perhaps even the war, not through superior numbers or firepower, but through speed, courage, and the willingness to take risks when it mattered most. "Tell them to be ready in 3 days," he said. "The Germans still don't know what hit them." And that was how American tank destroyers, moving at 55 miles per hour, rewrote the rules of armoured warfare. They proved that speed could overcome armour, that courage could overcome numbers, and that sometimes the boldest plan is the only one that works. The tactics developed by Harmon's Ghost Battalion would be adopted throughout the US Army, saving countless American lives in the final months of the war. But perhaps their greatest legacy was something less tangible. The reminder that even in the darkest moments, when all seems lost, a small group of determined individuals can change the course of history. The legend of the Ghost Battalion spread quickly through the Allied forces. By January 1945, as the Germans retreated from the Ardennes, Harmon found himself summoned to Supreme Allied headquarters. His wounds hadn't fully healed, but he stood at attention before General Eisenhower himself, still wearing bandages beneath his uniform. "At ease, Lieutenant," Eisenhower said, studying the young officer. "I've read the reports about your tank destroyers. Impressive work. Thank you, sir." "But it wasn't just me." "I know. Your men showed extraordinary courage." Eisenhower gestured to the large map covering one wall of the command center. "The Germans are falling back, but they're not defeated. Hitler is throwing everything he has into one last stand on the Rhine. We need to end this quickly, before more lives are lost." Harmon nodded. "My men are ready, sir." "I'm promoting you to captain, effective immediately." Eisenhower handed him a folder. "And I'm giving you command of the 805th Tank Destroyer. Battalion officially this time. You'll have 30 Hellcats and crews trained in your methods." Harmon opened the folder. Inside was an operations plan, codenamed Phantom Strike. We're going to breach the Siegfried Line, Eisenhower continued. But the Germans have concentrated their Panther battalions at key defensive positions. Your job is to neutralize those Panthers before our main assault. Harmon studied the plans. This puts us 20 miles behind enemy lines, sir. Yes, it does. I won't order you to take this mission, Captain. It's volunteer only. Harmon didn't hesitate. We'll do it, sir. 2 days later, Harmon stood before his expanded battalion. Some faces he recognized: Miller, now promoted to Lieutenant Cooper, with his arm in a sling but insisting he could still command a Hellcat. But most were new young men who had heard the stories and volunteered to join the elite unit. They're calling us the Ghost Battalion now, Harmon began. Some of you were with me in the Ardennes. The rest of you have heard the stories. Let me tell you what's real. He pointed to a Hellcat parked nearby. This machine can hit 55 miles per hour on open ground. A German Panther struggles to reach 30. Their turrets rotate at about 10 degrees per second, which means they need nearly 18 seconds to turn 180 degrees. Harmon paced in front of the men. In combat, 18 seconds is an eternity. In 18 seconds, we can fire, move 400 yards, and disappear. That's our advantage, not armor, not firepower, but speed and surprise. He unfolded a map on the hood of a jeep. We're going to infiltrate behind German lines here, near Aachen. Intelligence reports 3 Panther battalions positioned to defend the Siegfried Line. Our job is to neutralize those tanks before the main Allied assault. A young lieutenant raised his hand. Sir, how do we get 30 Hellcats behind enemy lines without being detected? We don't, Harmon replied. We're not taking 30 Hellcats. We're taking 10. Murmurs rippled through the group. Harmon continued. 10 Hellcats. Stripped down for maximum speed. Special modified exhausts to reduce noise. We'll infiltrate at night, in 3 separate groups, through gaps in the German lines that reconnaissance has identified. He looked at each man in turn. This is a volunteer mission. I won't lie about the risks. We'll be cut off, outnumbered, with limited supplies and no reinforcements. Our only advantages are speed, surprise, and the fact that the Germans still don't fully understand how we operate. Not a single man stepped back. Harmon felt a surge of pride. Good. We leave tomorrow night. Get some rest. You won't be getting much once we cross the lines. The crossing went smoother than expected. Under cover of darkness, with engines muffled and lights extinguished, the 10 Hellcats slipped through the German perimeter. They moved slowly, conserving fuel, using the terrain to mask their advance. By dawn, they had reached the first rally point, an abandoned farm 10 miles behind enemy lines. As the men camouflaged their vehicles with branches and netting, Harmon gathered his commanders. Latest intelligence, he said, unfolding a new map. The 1st Panther Battalion is stationed here, near the village of Hürtgen. They're refueling and performing maintenance today, which means they'll be vulnerable. What's the plan? Miller asked. We strike at dusk, when their visibility is compromised. 3 Hellcats hit from the north, 3 from the south, and 4 from the east. We target fuel trucks first, then ammunition storage, then the tanks themselves. 15 minutes maximum, then we withdraw to Rally Point Bravo. Cooper studied the map. There's a river crossing here. If they blow the bridge, we're trapped. That's why we need to be fast, Harmon emphasized. In and out before they realize what's happening. That evening, as shadows lengthened across the German-held territory, 10 Hellcats moved into position around the Panther encampment. Harmon, observing through binoculars from a hillside, counted 16 Panthers, plus support vehicles and infantry. Remember, he said into the radio, target priority is fuel, ammunition, then tanks. Strike fast, don't stay static for more than 30 seconds. Execute on my mark. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the camp into twilight. German soldiers moved between vehicles, some preparing evening meals, others performing maintenance checks. Now, Harmon ordered. 10 Hellcats erupted from 3 directions, engines roaring as they accelerated to maximum speed. The German camp exploded into chaos. Before the Panthers could even begin rotating their turrets, the first fuel trucks were already in flames. Harmon's Hellcat raced through the center of the camp, its 76mm gun firing with precision. A Panther caught in the middle of a track replacement was hit directly in its ammunition storage, its turret blown 50 feet into the air. German infantry scattered, diving for cover as the American tank destroyers tore through their position. "Time check," Harmon called over the radio. 90 seconds elapsed. His gunner, Sergeant Walsh, tracked another Panther struggling to turn its turret. Target acquired. Fire. The shell struck the Panther's side armor, penetrating to the crew compartment. The German tank shuddered to a halt, smoke pouring from its hatches. 3 minutes elapsed, Harmon announced. Begin withdrawal. As quickly as they had appeared, the Hellcats disengaged, racing away in different directions to confuse pursuit. Behind them, the German camp burned, at least 12 Panthers destroyed or disabled, fuel and ammunition supplies in flames. At Rally Point Bravo, a cave system mapped by French resistance fighters, Harmon conducted a roll call. All 10 Hellcats had made it, though 2 had sustained minor damage. "Excellent work," he told his crews. "But the Germans will adapt. They'll increase security, set up more anti-tank positions. We need to change tactics for the next target." The 2nd Panther Battalion was positioned differently, dispersed in small groups throughout a dense forest, with infantry patrols and anti-tank guns covering the approaches. Direct assault would be suicide. "We need to draw them out," Harmon explained to his commanders. "Make them come to us, on ground of our choosing." Miller pointed to a crossroads on the map. "Intelligence says they're expecting a supply convoy tomorrow night. If we hit it here, they'll have to respond." "And we'll be waiting," Cooper added, tracing a ridge line that overlooked the area. Perfect killing ground. The plan worked almost too well. When the Hellcats ambushed the German supply convoy, the response was immediate and overwhelming. 2 Panther companies converged on the crossroads, supported by infantry and mobile flak guns. But Harmon had positioned his forces carefully. As the Germans approached, 8 Hellcats hidden on the overlooking ridges opened fire simultaneously. The narrow valley became a killing zone, with German tanks unable to maneuver effectively or bring their superior frontal armor to bear. In less than 20 minutes, 14 more Panthers lay destroyed or abandoned. The Hellcats melted back into the darkness, leaving confusion and fear in their wake. German radio transmissions, intercepted by Allied intelligence, revealed growing panic among the Panther units. They reported being attacked by American Ghosts tanks that appeared from nowhere, struck with devastating effect, and vanished before they could respond. Field Marshal Model himself issued new orders. Panther units were to travel in larger groups, maintain constant air cover, and set up elaborate anti-tank screens. Resources that should have been preparing for the defense of the Siegfried Line were instead being diverted to counter Harmon's Phantom Force, but the 3rd Panther Battalion proved more challenging. Learning from the fate of the others, they established a defensive position in a small town, using the buildings as cover and setting up interlocking fields of fire. There would be no easy approach, no quick strike and withdrawal. Harmon studied the problem for 2 days, watching through binoculars as the Germans strengthened their position. His men grew restless, aware that time was running short. The main Allied offensive would begin in just 4 days. "We can't hit them directly," he finally told his commanders, "so we'll use their caution against them." The plan was audacious. 2 Hellcats would approach openly, making no attempt at concealment, drawing German fire and attention. Meanwhile, the remaining 8 would circle around and strike from an unexpected direction. Lieutenant Miller volunteered to lead the decoy force. "It's a one-way mission, sir," he said quietly. "Not necessarily," Harmon replied. "You just need to keep them occupied for 6 minutes. Then withdraw at maximum speed through this ravine. We'll cover your escape." Miller nodded, though both men knew the chances of survival were slim. The operation began at dawn the next day. Miller's 2 Hellcats appeared on the main road leading to the town, moving slowly, almost casually. The German response was immediate Panther turrets rotating, anti-tank guns adjusting their aim, but they didn't fire immediately. Caution born of painful experience made them hesitate, searching for the trap they knew must exist. That hesitation was all Harmon needed. While all German eyes were fixed on Miller's decoy force, 8 Hellcats raced through a dry streambed that approached the town from the rear. They burst from cover just 300 yards from the nearest Panther. The battle was brief but intense. Caught between two forces, with their turrets pointed in the wrong direction, the Panthers struggled to respond. By the time they began to organize an effective defense, 11 tanks were already burning, and the Hellcats were withdrawing. Miller's decoy force suffered heavily, 1 Hellcat destroyed, Miller's own vehicle badly damaged, but they accomplished their mission. As Harmon's main force created chaos in the German rear, Miller's crew abandoned their crippled vehicle and escaped on foot through the ravine, eventually rejoining the battalion 2 days later. With all 3 Panther battalions neutralized or severely depleted, Harmon led his remaining Hellcats back toward Allied lines. They had lost 3 vehicles and 11 men, painful casualties, but far fewer than anyone had expected for such an ambitious operation. As they approached the American forward positions, a radio message arrived from Supreme Headquarters. "Well done, Ghosts, stop main assault. Commencing 0600 tomorrow, stop, return to base for immediate refit stop." Harmon smiled grimly. The real battle for Germany was about to begin. 3 weeks later, with the Allied armies pushing deep into Germany, Harmon stood before a new group of officers at a hastily established tank destroyer school near the Rhine. His battalion, now expanded to 40 Hellcats, had been pulled from the front lines to train others in their revolutionary tactics. "Gentlemen," he began, "forget everything you've learned about armored warfare. The Panther is a superior tank in almost every respect. Better armor, better gun, better optics. In a head-to-head fight, it will destroy an American tank 9 times out of 10. He paused, letting that sink in. "But we don't fight head-to-head. We fight using speed, surprise, and teamwork. A Panther needs nearly 18 seconds to rotate its turret 180 degrees. In those 18 seconds, an M18 Hellcat can fire and move 400 yards. Harmon pointed to a chalkboard where the specifications of both vehicles were listed. "The math is simple. Our top speed is 55 miles per hour. Theirs is 30 on a good day, often less. We use that differential to dictate the terms of engagement." Raised his hand. "But the Hellcat's armor is thin. 1 hit from a Panther's 75mm gun, and it's over." "Exactly," Harmon agreed. "So don't get hit. Use terrain, use smoke, use coordinated attacks from multiple directions. Never stay still, never present your frontal aspect unless absolutely necessary, and never ever let them dictate the pace of battle." He walked to a map showing recent engagements. "In the past month, using these tactics, we've destroyed 76 Panthers while losing 11 Hellcats. That's a kill ratio of nearly 7-1 against a technically superior vehicle," the officers murmured, impressed despite their initial skepticism. "But the most important lesson," Harmon continued, "isn't about machines, it's about men. Your crews need absolute confidence in each other and in their vehicle. They need to believe they can win, despite the odds." He looked at each officer in turn. "Teach them that speed is their armor, that boldness is their weapon, and that no Panther, no matter how fearsome, can hit what it can't catch." As the war in Europe neared its end, the Ghost Battalion's legacy was already spreading throughout the US Army. Their tactics were incorporated into official doctrine, their exploits taught at West Point, their success held up as proof that American ingenuity and adaptability could overcome technological disadvantage. On the 7th of May 1945, when news of Germany's surrender reached the battalion's headquarters near Leipzig, Harmon found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. From those desperate days in the Ardennes to the final push across the Rhine, they had rewritten the rules of armoured warfare. During a small, private celebration that evening, Lieutenant Miller, now sporting captain's bars of his own, raised a toast. "To absent friends," he said solemnly, remembering those who hadn't lived to see victory. And to the lesson they taught us, Harmon added, that it's not always the biggest or the strongest who prevails. Sometimes it's the fastest, the most adaptable, the most willing to take calculated risks. After the war, as the U.S. military analyzed the conflict's lessons, the experience of the Ghost Battalion influenced a generation of military thinking. The emphasis on mobility, firepower, and shock action became central to American armor doctrine, eventually culminating in the development of the M1 Abrams, a main battle tank that, despite its heavy armor, was designed with speed and maneuverability as primary considerations. Jack Harmon himself went on to become a respected general, helping to shape NATO strategy during the Cold War. But he never forgot the lessons of those desperate days in the Ardennes, when a handful of lightly armored vehicles had changed the course of a battle through sheer audacity and speed. Years later, speaking to cadets at West Point, he summed up the philosophy that had guided him throughout his career. In warfare, as in life, apparent disadvantages can become advantages if you have the courage to use them differently. The Germans built Panthers to win set-piece battles, to dominate through superior firepower and protection. We built Hellcats to avoid set-piece battles altogether, to strike where the enemy wasn't looking, to be gone before they could respond. He smiled at the memory. They built their tanks to win the kind of war they wanted to fight. We built ours to ensure they never got the chance. The legacy of the Ghost Battalion and their 55 miles per hour tank destroyers lives on in modern military doctrine around the world. Their story reminds us that innovation often comes not from developing overwhelming force, but from finding creative ways to use existing capabilities, from turning perceived weaknesses into unexpected strengths. In the snow-covered forests of the Ardennes, a small group of men in lightly armored vehicles had proven that speed could overcome armor, that courage could overcome numbers, and that sometimes the boldest approach is also the wisest. The American M18 Hellcat tank destroyers, hunting at 55 miles per hour, had changed not just the outcome of battles, but the very nature of armored warfare itself. They showed that victory doesn't always go to the strongest or the best protected, but often to the fastest, the most innovative, and the most daring. As military historians would later note, the Ghost Battalion didn't just destroy Panthers, they rendered obsolete an entire philosophy of tank design that prioritized armor and firepower over mobility and surprise. Their success forced a fundamental reassessment of armored doctrine on both sides of the conflict. In the decades following World War II, as tanks grew ever heavier and more complex, military planners around the world would repeatedly return to the lessons of Harmon's Hellcats, that speed creates opportunities, that surprise multiplies combat power, and that even the most formidable weapon can be defeated if it cannot bring its strength to bear. Perhaps most importantly, the story of the Ghost Battalion reminds us that in the most dire circumstances, when facing seemingly insurmountable odds, innovation and courage can change the course of history. Just as those Hellcats racing at 55 miles per hour through the snow-covered Ardennes had demonstrated, sometimes the fastest way to solve a problem is also the most unexpected. And in that simple truth lies a lesson that extends far beyond the battlefields of World War II, a lesson about adaptability, about courage, and about the remarkable things that can be accomplished when we refuse to accept conventional limitations. The Panthers, with their thick armor and powerful guns, represented the pinnacle of traditional tank design. The Hellcats, with their unprecedented speed and maneuverability, represented something entirely new, a philosophy that valued mobility over protection, surprise over direct confrontation. In the end, it wasn't really a contest between machines, but between ideas. And, as history has repeatedly shown, new ideas, boldly executed, can overcome even the most formidable obstacles. So the next time you face a seemingly insurmountable challenge, remember the Ghost Battalion and their 55 miles per hour tank destroyers. Remember how they turned their greatest weakness, thin armor, into their greatest strength by never staying still long enough to be hit. Remember how they changed the rules of engagement, refusing to fight on their opponent's terms. And perhaps most importantly, remember that sometimes the key to victory isn't having the biggest or the strongest tools, but using what you have in unexpected ways. That's the real legacy of the American tank destroyers who hunted panthers through the forests of Europe, not just what they accomplished, but how they accomplished it. By embracing their unique capabilities rather than lamenting their limitations, they didn't just win battles, they changed how battles would be fought for generations to come. In the final analysis, the story of the Ghost Battalion isn't just about tanks and tactics, it's about the remarkable capacity of the human spirit to adapt, to innovate, and to overcome. It's about finding opportunities where others see only obstacles, about creating advantages where others see only disadvantages. And that's a lesson worth remembering, whether you're facing German Panthers in the Ardennes or the everyday challenges of modern life. Speed, surprise, and the courage to do the unexpected, these are weapons that never become obsolete, advantages that never lose their edge. So take a page from Captain Harmon's playbook. Find your equivalent of 55 miles per hour, your unique advantage that others might overlook. Use it boldly, decisively, and without hesitation. And you might just discover, as the Ghost Battalion did in those snowy forests so many years ago, that what seems like your greatest weakness can become your greatest strength, if only you have the courage to use it differently. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss any upload from us.